take
Well, welcome to the Aging Boomers. Well, I'm your host, Frank Sampson, and as many of you know on this show, we discuss so many of the items that are issues that are facing boomers, their parents, and of course, what is an aging population. I'm part of that. So I want to welcome everybody, and thanks for all your support on iTunes, iHeartRadio. Many of you have downloaded our free app on your iPhone or Android phone, which is the easiest thing to do. Just go in there and type in Aging Boomers, download it, and you'll get updated on all the shows, which we do each Monday and Friday. And today's show is sponsored by Senior Care Authority, professional senior placement and elder care management organization that has a national network of advisors to help in determining the right path for seniors in receiving proper care or even just supervision. So whether it's in-home care, assisted living, residential, or memory care, get the necessary advice from a senior care advisor in your area by calling Senior Care Authority at 888-809-1231 or go to seniorcareauthority.com. And we got a great guest today, Mickey Batsell. Did I pronounce your last name right, Mickey?
You did great.
All right, good. So Mickey is really a very experienced financial industry professional specializing in long-term care and surrounding issues, including Medicare, Medicaid, home health care, nursing home care, wealth transfer, and the selection of long-term care facilities. Through his 29 years of professional experiences and, more importantly, personal family experiences, Mickey has an in-depth understanding of the challenges his clients face. As a protector of people's independence and dignity, he currently represents industry-leading financially sound insurance companies. Mickey has a bachelor's degree in marketing and an MBA in accounting. He is a fellow certified senior advisor and a charter life underwriter and a fellow of Life Management Institute. Mickey is a member of the American Association of Long-Term Care Insurance, Society of Financial Services Professional, National Association of Insurance and Financial Advisors, and of course the Society of Certified Senior Advisors. So Mickey, thanks for joining us on the Aging Boomers. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me, Frank. Look forward to it.
So I know we're going to be getting into discussing long-term care and long-term care insurance and a number of other things, but share with us what motivated you to focus your business in the long-term care industry.
Well, first of all, I love the fact that you said I've been at this for 29 years. Unfortunately, that's not quite true. This is my 41st year in the business.
Oh, I don't know where where did I get 29 from? I don't know, so I apologize.
No, that's because when somebody asks you how old you are, you say 29.
Okay.
But several years ago, I was a field officer with an insurance company, and they came out with the employee benefit of this thing called long-term care insurance, and it was available for employees and family members of employees. And so we took advantage of that, and we went to the Houston area and talked to my wife's mother about the idea that we thought it was a pretty good thing for her to do. And she didn't, she wasn't really enthusiastic about it, but in the end she decided, okay, we'll do a little bit of this long-term care stuff. Well, about 3 years later, 3.5, maybe 4 years later, all of a sudden she was in a position that she needed it. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she spent about a little over a year with us before she went from around the kitchen table in the morning and broke her hip and fell and went to the hospital, and then 6 weeks later to the nursing home. And all of a sudden I was in the middle of all this. Along about the same time, we became the legal guardian of my grandmother, who was in a nursing home, but she was on Medicaid. And so with the experience with my mother-in-law being private pay and with my grandmother being on Medicaid, I saw both sides of the fence. And I struggled with the whole process, and I was frustrated. And I thought, if I'm having these kinds of issues and I'm supposedly on the inside looking out, I could only imagine what would happen to someone who wasn't on the inside. And for most people, I learned that the first time when someone was dealing with a long-term care event, it was their first time. So I decided at that point that I was going to become a crusader. And so I gave up everything else I was doing and started focusing on long-term care and long-term care issues and long-term care planning. And today I'm recognized as one of the go-to people in the country on it, and I help folks all over the country, advisors with their clients and my individual clients. So it's something that I'm really, really committed to, and I look to myself as a crusader. So that's how I got started, and that's where I am today.
Well, I know you went through a lot with your mother-in-law. Unfortunately, she did have that insurance. What do you think in today's dollars? Any guess on what that could have cost somebody if she didn't have the insurance? I know I'm kind of throwing you a curve there. I don't even know, but I don't know if you have any idea.
Well, I can tell you this, that I kept very accurate records as she had assets to help pay for it, but the long-term care plan was a very small plan. Mm-hmm. It only paid $40 a day to start with, and ended up, because it had an inflation factor, I think it ended up at $44 or $48 a day, and it was a 3-year benefit period. And so even though that didn't cover everything, it bought us some time and allowed us the opportunity to position assets and to sell our home and things in order to generate an income. So the cost of care was significantly less back in the early 90s than it is today, or mid-90s, I should say. And I think that when we started out, she was in the nursing home, and the cost of care was around $80-something a day. Mm-hmm. That was in North Texas. But today, that's probably closer to $200 a day. So depending upon how long someone is needing care, they can just start multiplying, and they'll figure it out.
Yeah. So, we talk about long-term care on the aging boomers quite often, but how would you define it? How do you define long-term care as it relates to your part of the industry in insurance?
Well, there are a couple of ways to look at this. First of all, if you take a look at a long-term care policy and how it works, all a long-term care policy is a pot of money, and you gain access to that pot of money if something happens, and that something is what we call triggers, and those triggers are someone is in a situation where they don't have the ability to perform 2 of the 6 activities of daily living, which are standard all across the spectrum, and those are bathing, eating, dressing, toileting, continence, and mobility, sometimes called transfer. Or they're in a situation where they have a cognitive impairment. But the key to it is that condition is diagnosed by their doctor and has a reasonable expectation of lasting at least 90 days, and that makes it a long-term in nature, but it also satisfies the definition of a tax-qualified plan, which means that the benefits that they receive will not have to be reported as income tax. And a long-term care event can last for a very short time, for a very long time. In my grandmother's case, it was 13 and a half years. In my mother-in-law's case, it was 5.5 years. So when someone says, well, what's the average length of stay? And I said, well, I don't like the term average because even though what you hear on the streets are somewhere between 3 to 4 years, that means that someone had 1 day of care and somebody had 8 years of care, and so that on average, the numbers speak for themselves. But it's a tough call to try to figure out exactly how much should you prepare for, but it's always the basis of looking at what the risk is and how much of that potential cost can you afford to pay from income sources that you already have, and how much would you like to transfer to some other source. And that's how you determine exactly what size of a policy someone should acquire.
Yeah. So what do you think I know one of the major misconceptions about long-term care insurance, it might not be about the insurance as much as people think, well, I've got Medicare, I can get on Medicaid, I'll get all my costs covered. I know that's a major misconception, if you want to expound upon that, and maybe some other misconceptions that people have about long-term care insurance. Can you share that with us?
I'd be delighted to. Well, the biggest challenge that really there are two. One is that in dealing with financial advisors, they will tell me that, well, my client really doesn't need to even look at long-term care because they have enough assets to pay for the care. And they'll say, well, they have like $2 million in assets. And I said, well, let's think about that for a minute. In today's environment, if you get a reasonable return of 5%, which is pretty reasonable to assume, you're talking about $100,000 a year. And if you start using that income stream to pay for the cost of care, should it come up, then what are you going to live on? What's going to support your lifestyle? So it's not the message in that arena is that assets don't pay for care, income pays for care. So it's the income stream that you have to plan for, not the asset base. On the other side of the coin, most of the time people have this misconception that Medicare is going to pay for long-term care. Well, that's just not true. There is a benefit in Medicare that says that if you go to a skilled nursing facility, or SNF is what it's called, and those can be located either in a hospital, a wing of a hospital, or part of a nursing home, or so many rooms in a nursing home. And if you go to that skilled nursing facility, following within 30 days of a 3-night stay in a hospital and you go to that facility for the same reason you were in the hospital, then Medicare will pay the first 20 days in full, and up to date, the next 80 days you pay a copay, and Medicare pays the balance each day. And then in fine print at the bottom of that, it says, provided you're making progress, because it's a rehab benefit. It is not a long-term care benefit. If someone's making progress, then Medicare stops paying. And it really is a challenge. I know in the case of my mother-in-law, she went to the skilled nursing facility, which was 4 beds, I think, were dedicated to that in the nursing home that she was staying. And so here you had a woman that was in her late 80s who had Alzheimer's and just had hip replacement, and they were teaching her to walk again. And so they have to track the progress. Well, I think Medicare in that case paid for 9 days or worth of care, because after that she wasn't making progress. So it is not a long-term care benefit. It is a skilled nursing facility or rehab benefit, because it's not health care. I mean, let's face it, long-term care falls in a nursing home or an assisted living facility. You're paying for room and board.
Right.
That's it. You're not paying for any medical costs. Medical costs are paid by your health insurance or Medicare, which is a health insurance plan. So it's not really health insurance at all. And the people that are getting involved in the housing or in the assisted living and the nursing home business, or particularly the assisted living, are the companies that have provided housing on a temporary basis. We call those places hotels, the Marriotts, the Hiltons, and the people that are in it. I promise you, not for their benevolent society or not for charity. They're in it to make a profit. So it's a business.
Right. So, long-term care insurance has been around for a while. You've been in the business quite a while. Why does it seem more prevalent today than it did years ago?
Well, I think I should preface that by saying that the long-term care insurance, as we know it today, has advanced to a stage completely more sophisticated than it was when it first started. When it first came out, this animal was called nursing home insurance. And that was it. It was just help pay for the cost of nursing home. And then years after that, they said, well, I think we might have to have a home health care policy. So home health care policies were originated. And then they decided to combine them and make them what they call comprehensive, and it would pay for home health care or nursing home, much like a comprehensive automobile policy. Well, guess what? When people started using it, and then along about in the early 90s, late 80s, these things started popping up called assisted living facilities. So much so that particular segment of the construction industry has been the fastest growing segment of the construction industry in the United States, which is building the assisted living facilities. Mm-hmm. Well, the old policies wouldn't cover it. So now then the industry came out and included assisted living, but they also included adult daycare and a category called alternate care. And the reason the industry put the alternate care in it as being something that would be covered is because they didn't want the consumer to be caught in the position again as it was when assisted living facilities jumped up. So now today's policies are truly comprehensive. And that's a little bit of the history of the long-term care policies as we know them today.
Okay. So the client, is there an average client? I mean, are you mainly who is purchasing long-term care insurance? Male, female? Kind of what's the age? Can you be too young to get it? Can you be too old to get it? Kind of give us that overview.
Well, first of all, the most frequently asked question that I get is, "Hey, Mickey, when should I think seriously about exploring this topic of long-term care insurance?" And my opinion is that I tell them that you should really start thinking seriously about it at age 50. Because at that point you might have more discretionary income to pay for it. You recognize the need. You've got some assets that you want to protect or you want to pass along to someone else. So 50 is a pretty good age. Now, I put a caveat on that, and I say unless you have a family history of Alzheimer's or dementia, and in that case, you should get it right away, because those unfortunate situations have no age barriers, and you want to particularly protect yourself in the event of that. So that's the age that I tell people they should start looking at it.
Yeah.
Does that help?
Yeah, and also with everybody's so much talk recently about all the new medical insurance and Obamacare and no more pre-existing condition. People should understand that doesn't apply to long-term care insurance. Is that correct?
That's correct. That's correct. Not at all. Doesn't impact it at all. However, I will tell you that one of the things, if you think about this, it makes sense, has to do with the baby boomers. Every segment of our population or economy or however you want to describe it, that the baby boomers have touched has exploded from the housing industry when they were getting married and having children, the education, schools being built, the investment arena, the people putting more money into retirement plans or investments themselves. So what's happening now is they move into this era where they are becoming the folks that are going to be most likely to need care in the future. They're going to have a huge, huge impact because they're overwhelming the marketplace. There are going to be more people needing care than there are going to be people that can provide the care. So as that population our elderly population grows at an increasing rate, and since the birth rate since then has been much lower, there are not going to be as many people to help take care of the baby boomers. And for those that do need the care, they're going to have to be in a position that they can afford to pay for it. And many of them might be able to, but the vast majority of them are going to need some help from a long-term care policy.
I've said to people, and I don't sell long-term care insurance, but as you know, I'm in the industry, and I've said to people, it gets to a point in your life that maybe you don't need that life insurance policy anymore. It might be more beneficial to get long-term care insurance, but now there's kind of combination type of policies. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. We call those hybrid products. Mm-hmm. And the reason is that they are traditional products, life insurance and annuities, that have a long-term care feature built into them. The easiest way to explain it is that if you have a life insurance policy that has a death benefit of $150,000 and it has this long-term care feature built into it, then it would allow someone who was in a situation where they needed long-term care to access that death benefit most of the time it's like a 2% per month of the death benefit. So in my illustration, that would mean a $3,000 a month benefit for long-term care expenses. And that $3,000 can be accessed without penalties or surrender charges and no tax consequences because it's used to be paid, used to pay long-term care expenses. But every month that withdrawal is made, then the death benefit is reduced by that $3,000. Now, if an annuity hybrid product would work similarly in that if someone had $150,000 in an annuity, they could access that amount without any penalties or surrender charges if it were being accessed for long-term care. So that's how the hybrid products work. There are a couple of other bells and whistles that you can put on it to make it last longer. What I mean by that is that the $150,000, if you were withdrawing 2% a month, would last for 50 months. And if you wanted it to last longer, you could add a rider in the beginning when you acquire either the annuity or the life insurance contract to make it go another 50 months or for a lifetime, but you would pay an additional premium to have that privilege. But that makes it, if you really think about it, that would make it a long-term care policy with a 50-month elimination period because you're paying for the first 50 months out of the value of your annuity or your life insurance contract, and then the insurance company begins to pay after that because you've already exhausted your resources.
Yeah. So those hybrid policies pretty popular today?
They're becoming more popular and the reason they're becoming popular is that some people have they will say, well, Mickey, if I take out this traditional long-term care insurance policy and I never need it, I've just kind of thrown my money away. I said, no, wait a minute. Don't take that approach because what you're really saying, I said, you wouldn't be that upset if you paid for your homeowner's policy all these years and you never had to rebuild because of the house fire. You wouldn't take that position if you never totaled your automobile and didn't have it replaced. So it's the same, it's the same position, the same viewpoint as it comes to traditional long-term care insurance. It's risk. And all you're doing is you're paying the cost of the risk, and that's what the premiums are. Yeah. So that's a little different. But then what's made the hybrid products become popular is that some people feel like that, well, if I have this hybrid life insurance policy or hybrid annuity, if I never use it, I have something that I can leave to my heirs, or I have something in terms of an annuity or that I could use and turn it into an income stream. So it's for those people in those situations that are right. I say all the time, I said, in this arena, one shoe size just does not fit everybody. And that's why it's nice to have a number of arrows in the quiver that you can help people design something to fit their particular circumstance and that can be affordable to them. Mm-hmm. I'll add one other thing that's approach that's on the scenes today, and that is that if somebody has a life insurance policy already and it doesn't have one of these riders on it, there is a way that they can turn that life insurance policy into an income stream to pay for the cost of long-term care by selling that policy. It's called a life settlement. Right. It falls under that term, under that umbrella, but it's not a traditional life settlement. But it's a way that some income can be provided to help someone stay in a long-term care environment, and it's placed into a qualified Medicaid trust so that it doesn't harm them for qualifying for Medicaid should that event come up in the future. So there's just all kinds of things out there today, and the important message is that it's not one of those do-it-yourself kits where you can get something off the internet and fill in the blanks. You really need somebody that can help you navigate through this to make sure that you're making the right choice for something that fits in your circumstances.
Yeah, you mentioned risk before in that example, and I think another important message people need to realize is I don't think people realize the high risk there is that they're going to need some sort of help. I mean, statistics do show that once you reach age 65, 70% of people will need some sort of long-term care. And a lot of people just don't realize that. So the risk is pretty high.
It truly is, Frank. And what I tell people if I'm talking to a couple, I can tell you that with a reasonable degree of certainty that if I have a couple that's 65 years old or older, one of them is going to need some form of care during their lifetime. I can't tell you which one,
right,
but I can tell you that one of them will.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely true. And men are the worst at saying that it's not going to happen to me. I think that we all think that we have an S tattooed on our chest, or Superman, and it's never going to happen. But that's just not true. You have to just back up and say, look, let's face reality and let's plan for it just in case. And it's not so much that they might need it. The real consideration is the impact that it would make on family and those they care about and those they have a responsibility for if something did happen to them.
Yeah.
It's not so much for them, but it's for the family. And I've heard said by many people is that the reason that people will evaluate a situation and decide to purchase a long-term care product of some sort to fill that need is because they love someone or they want to make sure that they're not going to jeopardize someone if something should happen to them.
Yeah, it's a gift. It's a gift for your children, that's for sure.
You bet.
So Mickey, you've been very informative. Unfortunately, we only have about not even a minute left, but I want to make sure that people know how they can get a hold of you and get, you kind of cover the country, as you said. So how can people reach out to you and where can they get additional information about this subject matter just to learn more? So why don't you share that with everybody and then go from there.
All right, thank you. Well, the easiest way is going to be email. And my email is just Mickey Batsell, and that's Mickey, and Batsell is Batsell, @mickeybatsell.com. And I'd be delighted to send them all kinds of information that might be able to help them out, or just to steer them in the right direction.
Oh, that's great. And I know I was at your website, and you have some good information on there, but it's a changing industry, so I'm sure you have even more up-to-date information each day. So, great.
Well, thank you, Frank. I appreciate the time.
Yeah, and I thank you so much for joining us, Mickey, and have a wonderful holiday and a great New Year, and I just want to thank everybody for all their support and joining us today. And Mickey, we'll have you back in the future. Let us know as things, new developments happen. Let us know. I'd love to have you back.
Thank you.
All right, great. Thank you, everybody. Be safe out there. Thanks for joining us on the Aging Boomers, and we'll talk to you all soon.